Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp.
Vitesse, ja! Ja! Ja!
Daar is hij. Ja! Ja!
Daar is Klaassen, goal!
Hi everyone, podcast 77 from Football-Oranje is here. After a short break, we are back. So do hit the like button if you're glad that our podcast is back. Of course, we have been busy. If you go over to our YouTube channel, we've been doing lots of stuff recently on the Dutch national team. Lots of match reaction videos to the recent national team games and also to the Ajax-Liverpool game too. So please, again, go to our YouTube channel and check those out. You may well be listening to us on YouTube today or SoundCloud or iTunes, where we release our podcasts each time. I'm Michael Statham. I'm with Mike Bell. And it's time to talk about the Dutch Eredivisie. We're 6 rounds into the new campaign. We've had plenty of questions in. Ajax PSV final will, of course, be covered, plus lots of other teams too. And the second half of the podcast will be devoted more to the Dutch national team. We've also had some questions in about that. Mike, I think even after 6 weeks of Dutch football just sort of going on now, we haven't done a podcast since. The first thing we need to talk about is something that happened yesterday. Ajax beating vvv-Venlo 13-0, a record in the Eredivisie. And it was just like a training exercise in that second half. Do you take anything away from that about Ajax, or was that a complete freak?
I think you have to take a few things out of it from Ajax's point of view. I think you look at Anthony's performance. He was excellent on the wing, and you'd say that he was the big miss against Liverpool. And if they had him, they might have had more potency in the attack. His crossing was excellent. He took his goal well. And then, you have to look at Traore's performance. I mean, going into that game, a lot of people still have doubts about Traore, including myself. He takes a lot of chances to score in previous games, but you can't argue with 5 shots on target, 5 goals. And you have to look at him getting more chances, especially in the Champions League. When you looked at that game against Liverpool, they had the chances, he just didn't take them. It seems that Ten Hag now has attacking options, and then the third thing I take away is Ekkelenkamp's performance. For he was excellent as well, and he could be the man to replace Kudus if he's out for months. Why can't he start next game against Atalanta in midfield, because he was excellent as well.
That links in nicely to one of the questions I had in from Matt on Twitter. He was asking who replaces Kudus in the Ajax 11. Will we see a more frequent Labiad? Well, Matt, from my point of view, Ekkelenkamp did a good job against VVV with his impact in the 10 role, which is kind of replacing what Kudus was doing, because Kudus had that energy about him in midfield. In my opinion, I don't think Ekkelenkamp is the answer. However, I do want to give Traore a chance as a striker, which could mean that you're playing someone else behind him, such as Tadic, if Tadic isn't playing in the striker's role. It would be good for me to see Traore in the striker's role for Ajax, and then Tadic behind him, and having Promos out on the left wing, Anthony on the right wing, or perhaps Neres on one of those wings instead. I just think that at the moment they're lacking a bit of energy without Kudus, and the way to go maybe is a bit more direct. Use Traore's strength and attack. He's got great hold-up play. We saw that against VVV. And their defenders aren't small, and it really brings a lot of those players into play quite nicely. That's what the kind of thing I took away from that 13-0 hammering, was that Traore could be the answer as a striker at the top, because he just gives that nice focal point. There have been doubts in the past that he's lacking a bit of finishing, but for me, didn't against VVV. Would you say Ekkelenkamp is the answer then, Mike? Because one of the other questions I had him was from Cam, and he was saying that the majority of Ajax fans are disappointed with Erik ten Hag's starting lineup choices and player positioning. Do you feel the same way? Is he trying to make something work that we aren't aware of?
Yeah, I think Ten Hag's started off the season getting some criticism for his lineups, and he keeps chopping and changing them every week. So how can he actually have any rhythm when he doesn't seem to know his best 11 at all either? I would give Ekkelenkamp a chance. I think he earned it after that performance yesterday. I know VVV, if we looked at them, say they were absolutely shockingly bad, but I thought he did well. I think he's done well for the under-21s when he gets a chance for Netherlands as well. So I don't see why you wouldn't start him over somebody like Labiad, who I don't rate at all. I think he got his chances through the middle earlier on the season. I didn't think he did well at all. Whereas if there's a choice for me. I want to see Tadic in the 10. I think that would work. But Quincy Promise has been so disappointing for me. I'd keep Tadic on the wing. Maybe try Traore and try Camp in midfield. But yeah, I think Erik ten Hag, what he needs to do is quickly find his best 11 because he's not done that at all this season. Losing Kudus is a factor. I mean, he was looking like their best player before he got injured. Having Anthony missing a couple of games wasn't great, but he's back now, so he has to start. But yeah, I think that Ten Hag needs to nail down his starting 11. He's got his defence sorted. He just needs to sort his midfield and his attack and try and get some rhythm in there because he's not been able to do that at all this season. He keeps chopping and changing for the Eredivisie and European games. If you want to start with Traore in the Eredivisie games, why not start him in the European games? So yeah, I think he just needs to make up his mind pretty quickly.
You stole some of those words out of my mouth then. I was going to say that he needs to pick his best team as soon as possible, Ten Hag. At the start of the season, in pre-season, he was putting Labiad as a striker. I don't think, in response to Matt's question, that's going to be the case. I don't think Labiad's going to come back into the 11. Unfortunately for him, he did have some good roles in pre-season against those bigger teams, actually. I think it was against Hertha Berlin and the strikers role, he did really well. But I think Traore is a better option as a striker, or if they're going to play a false 9, stick with Tadic. But yeah, the thing that you repeated there, Mike, for me was the defence. The defence now seems to be there, and I'm really glad that we're seeing Perskers starting every week for Ajax. He's a great centre-back, and he's not making the mistakes like he was last season. He seems really assured, and someone who can take on what Matthijs de Ligt was doing. A lot of his best attributes you can put into Skurs as well. And whilst they're not quite at the same level yet, he's a very good replacement finally for de Ligt, particularly with his strength and his the way he can boss the ball in the back four. He also brings the ball forward quite nicely, which is a handy thing to have. And then you've got Mazraoui, you've got Blintz, and you've got Tagliafico, and they're doing quite well as a unit. And in goal, Onana's still just being, he's just an absolute figure, isn't he? In that whole team. Anyway, yeah, I think the midfield's kind of sorted itself out now with Klaassen, Gravenberch, and Kudus was in that starting 11 as well. But now that he's not going to be in there, I guess it's going to be either giving Ekkelenkamp a chance and he has to really take it, or it will be someone like Promes or Tadic playing there. But yeah, looking ahead to the Atalanta match, now if you listen to this podcast, we might have already played the Atalanta match. But just in general in the Champions League, Mike, what have you made of a level of Ajax? And are they capable of beating the Atalanta? Are they capable of beating Midtjylland away from home and at home to progress? Or is this team still in transition and needs another year to try and make the likes of Spurs as good as they can be, ready for Champions League?
I think you can write Ajax off. I think if in the second half, if Klaassen's shot doesn't hit the post, they get a well-earned draw against Liverpool. I think against possibly one of the best teams in Europe, possibly maybe the best team in Europe, they came so close to getting a point. I know, I think it's the Telegraph came out afterwards and said that Ajax couldn't beat Liverpool's B team. I don't think it was Liverpool's B team just because you take off Virgil van Dijk. I think it's still one of the strongest teams in Europe, and I think that Ajax did really well against them. So if you can do that against Liverpool, there's no reason why they can't do it against Atalanta, who, the past couple of weeks they've slipped up a couple of times. I know that they hammered Midtjylland in Europe, but they've lost the last two Serie A games quite easily, and the one against Sampdoria at the weekend. I know they rested a couple of players, but they're easily beaten in that. So it shows that Ajax can do it. I think that Atalanta seem to do well against teams that they're really raise their game against. I think that Ajax could be kind of an even game for them. I think that it could go either way. I think if Ajax attack them through Anthony, then I don't see why they can't sneak something against them. But yeah, the Midtjylland games now are the two big ones. I think because if Atalanta won so easily in Denmark, it means that Ajax need to win there as well. If they don't do that, then there's no way they're going to finish, say, second in this group table. I think Tuesday's game is probably a must not lose for Ajax. I don't think it's a must win yet, but it's one that they can't really afford to lose, because then they drop possibly 6 points behind both Liverpool and Atalanta, and that's probably a gap that they probably can't make up. So a draw, I think, in Italy would be a good result after losing against Liverpool. But, I don't see why Ajax can't win. They've got young players, but they've got ones that have experience, like Blind, Onana, Tagliafico, Klaassen now. I think he's been excellent since he's come back to Ajax. I think they have enough to win these games. They just need to go out there and do it. And I think we'll see a better Ajax on Tuesday because of Anthony being there. I think he makes such a difference to the side.
Plenty more to come on the Football-Oranje podcast, including the Dutch national team and the Eredivisie as well. But first, Mike, I want to move on slightly from Ajax and talk about European teams still. PSV, Feyenoord and AZ have all been involved too. What have you made of PSV starts for season, Mike? And there's a question from Abdul, which was, why were PSV so bad against Granada in the Europa League? Can they bounce back? We haven't actually spoken on the podcast, at least, about the impact of Mario Götze since he's come in. Daniel Marlin's had a decent start to season 2. He looks like he's coming back to that kind of player that he was before his big injury. What have you made of the manager, and what have you made of PSV as a whole this season?
I think I got swept up in a bit of the hype after the PSV game. I think that was the first one that we saw good. So we saw basically Schmidt's vision and his nearly full-strength team. They swept PSV aside, and then I was kind of rubbing my hands together thinking, this is the PSV that's going to sweep the league and that can go far in Europe. And then against Granada, they seemed to look so lackluster. They seemed, the Spanish team just got at them constantly and made them look quite average. I know Götze put them in the lead. I think if he maybe had stayed on the pitch for the second half, they might have had a different result. But yeah, that second half they just collapsed. They had nothing going forward. Malin couldn't get the ball enough. Madueke didn't really have an impact off the bench. And defensively they were so poor. And Granada just got at them constantly. Sangara in midfield kept losing the ball. Dumfries was too far up the pitch. He kept getting exposed on the left. I think that was a very worrying performance, and they followed it up with another loss, this time against Vitesse. You could argue that PSV were possibly, after Götze, they were missing their second most influential player, and that's Cody Gakpo. I think he's started the season on such good form that you notice when he's not there. He adds something more to the attack. He scores goals, he gets assists, he runs at defences, he creates stuff. He's basically an all-round attacker who's been so key to PSV this season. And when him and Götze aren't there, they look a lot less than what they are when they are in there. I've got PSV as my favourites to win the title, but you take Götze out of the team, you take Gakpo out of the team, they seem to be missing something. And defensively, they can get a bit muddled up sometimes. I think PSV fans were expecting them to sign another centre-back when Baumgartner didn't eventually leave for Fulham. He sort of stayed, and that got put on the back burner. But I think defensively they look suspect. Going forward, I think if they can get a full strength attack out there, they should be fine. But yeah, I'd be worried after the last two performances that maybe this PSV team aren't as solid as I thought they were going to be. But yeah, I think they should still have enough to get out this Europa League group. I think Ammonia and Nicosia aren't anything special, and PAOK, the Greek team, aren't anything special, so I still see PSV getting out of the group. But I think that the results against Granada and Vitesse especially have kind of brought them back down to earth from being runaway Eredivisie one to watch to being something slightly less, and now it's more of an evenly match with Ajax.
It's great though that we've got this title race going on. It's nice that Ajax aren't firing just like they were in the 18-19 season, where they ran away with the league really. Just how much quality they had. And PSV are full of quality, but they're going to have ups and downs like Ajax, like Feyenoord, and it's going to make for a great season. Vitesse being up there too, by the way, just got to take my hat off to the way they played against PSV. They just made it very difficult for them. And I thought that the battle of the German managers, and it was interesting to see Thomas Lech come out on top. Lucas Schmidt for me, he's come to shake up PSV as a club, hasn't he? He's got all these attacking weapons at his disposal, lots of midfielders, and he's playing a 4-4-2. sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it really leaves the defence a little bit, particularly in the wide areas with the attacking midfielders that are playing so high up the pitch. They can't quite help the fullback quite so much, and it just means that they're always conceding chances. Against Vitesse, the defensive organisation was kind of out the window. It's the little things like when they signed the goalkeeper and Vogo, they wanted someone who could play out from the back, and in his first few games he made two big errors, didn't he? Just from playing the ball out from the back, and it just put egg on the face of Lucas Schmidt. The fact that he tried to sign a goalkeeper to stop this kind of thing from happening, and then look what happens. Do you think it's going to take a while tactics-wise with PSV? Because I just feel like they've got the players to go out and, like you say, win the league at a canter if they're all fighting, firing and playing well in this formation. But they just haven't adjusted yet to what Schmidt wants. And in the back, they're playing like fullbacks at centre-back. It just means it's a little bit disorganised.
Yeah, I think that the players are going to take some time to adjust to what Schmidt wants. I think it's interesting when you take the fact that the two teams that have dropped points against in the Eredivisie both have German managers. I remember when they drew with Heracles, their manager, Wormuth, came out and said that he knows Schmidt's tactics, so he knows how to frustrate them. That was interesting. Again, today they came up against a German coach and they were frustrated. So that's maybe one to watch for the rest of the season. But yeah, I think it's just going to take some time for them. But again, today I think that they were missing some key players. I think Rosario has been excellent so far this season. I know he gets a lot of grief from some fans, but I think he's been great since Schmidt came in. Gakpo has been great, and Dumfries is a big miss when you're playing somebody like Maro Jr. at right back. I think that once PSV get the full strength squad fit and firing, then we'll see a much better side. Again, Ihatrin, he's struggling in this formation. Again, he was given another chance today. I didn't think he was that great. So something needs to click with him, and needs to figure out how he can get the best out of him in this formation. But yeah, I think it's just going to take time. I think maybe a month or two down the line might see the best of PSV.
It might well be that we're seeing PSV put in 6-7 goals past a team like Ajax can, but just not yet. I think there'll be some games coming up. They've got loads of good home games that they'll probably win quite easily. They need some bigger away tests like this Vitesse match to see how Schmidt can respond. In the Europa League, though, they've got to get their act together pretty quickly because Ammonia next on the horizon, and then there's games. They're so congested at the moment. I just don't know if it suits PSV trying to get out of that group. So that's my concern for them. And that comes back to the question we had from Abdul, that, can they bounce back in the Europa League? And you know what? I'm being a bit pessimistic about it at the moment. They can blow teams to the park with their attack, but they just seem so disorganised in defence at the moment that I can't see them winning games 2-0. They're going to end up drawing them 2-2 just because of the way their defence are. Another challenger for the Eredivisie this season are Feyenoord. And like PSV, really, they're going waves. There's weeks where you think, wow, Feyenoord with Steven Berghuis scoring the goals, they've got a chance. And then there's other weeks like this weekend where they draw with RKC Waalwijk, and then you're thinking, actually, they're nowhere near.
Yeah, Feyenoord one is strange because that's 3 results in a row, 3 draws. Dick Advocat gets a lot of praise because they're unbeaten since last year. But yeah, in the attack, there's sometimes they look so wasteful. You saw in midweek against Dinamo Zagreb, they should have won that game comfortably, but Brian Winson fluffed 2 big chances. Steven Berghuis missed his penalty. And they just have those weeks where they seem to drop points in games that you're expecting them to win. Like last weekend it was Sparta Rotterdam. This weekend it's RKC Waalwijk. On a different day, Feyenoord beat these teams 3-4-0. But they just seem to have these blips that prevents them from winning games, and this is why they can't challenge for the title. Because they just drop points in games that they should be winning. They have a strong enough team to bulldoze these teams, but yeah, they somehow just don't do it, and you can't really put your finger on it because their attack should be good enough. Their defence should definitely be good enough with Senesi in there. He's a wonderful centre-back. Bailo in goals, an excellent goalkeeper. And they've got the full-backs. But yeah, just something's just not clicking for them. They're not winning games.
Justin Bilo is a good shout. For me, he's been a standout player this season. What are your thoughts on Bilo, Mike? Because I really fancy him to get a role with Oranje in probably the next year or two. I think he could really have a good shout to be the regular goalkeeper there.
Waiting for him to become the number one eventually in the next few years. I think he will take over from Silas, and I think he's the best young goalkeeper the Netherlands have. I think Joel Drommel at FC Twente is another one that could eventually get called up to the national team, but I think he'll do that once he gets a move away from Twente. It depends on where he goes next. I think Bio has been excellent this season. He comes up with big saves and big key moments. And yeah, I want to see more of him. I think that he's right now he's stuck with the under 21s. I don't know why he's not called up. I think if you've seen what Bizot's been doing recently, I don't think he deserves it. I think why not just bring up Bio for the experience? I think he was in an under 21 squad last time around, but pulled out. Maybe that's because he doesn't see himself as an under 21 goalkeeper. He's quite frustrated that he's not getting a chance in the Netherlands team at the moment. But I think if that's the case, then he's kind of take the games you can get with the under 21s, because that's the way you force yourself into the full team. Coop Miners has done it. Bio can do it next. But yeah, if I was Frank de Boer, I'd definitely be giving him a call up.
I don't know about you, Mike, but I love the Thursday Europa League evenings. So I love seeing PSV Feyenoord and RZ competing against those other teams. It's also a great stage to see them playing at their best and seeing who out of these teams has those players who can go on to that next level. Out of these then, PSV Feyenoord and RZ, now that we've seen a bit of them this season, we've seen them in their first game in the Europa League, how do you see them all going? I mean, just take, for example, RZ Alkmaar with their win against Napoli, looking defensively so much more secure than they have been. Do you fancy them to go on and now get out of that group? Same goes to Feyenoord PSV. Do you reckon they're going to get out of their groups?
I would definitely fancy PSV to get out of their group. I think that I'm hoping that the Granada game was a blip and they'll improve this week against Ammonia Nicosia, who 9 times out of 10 you say PSV will beat. Feyenoord, I think, have a great chance of getting out there. I think Dynamo Zagreb was a tough away game, and Feyenoord bossed them. I think that showed that they can battle CSK Moscow for the top of this group. And AZ was the one that I had the biggest worries about, especially given their form so far this season, and the fact that their squad was so ravaged by coronavirus. And that win against Napoli's totally changed it. I think that they now have a great chance if they can win their home games. I think if they win their 3 home games, then they're through. The win against Napoli was totally out of the blue. But yeah, they got their tactics right. Defensively, they were excellent. I think Bruno Martins Indy was fantastic at the back. And De Wit, he just has the qualities of a striker. I think he's good in the air. He's good with chances when it falls to him in the box, and I think he's got that finishing quality to be a number 9. So I mean, he got one chance, he took it, and to get away with a famous victory. So I think that if they can beat Rijeka, I think that's a tough game. I don't know much about them. I don't know if they're strong. I think that's a tough one, but if they beat them home and away and get wins against Real Sociedad at home, then yeah, I don't see why AZ can't get out of the group now, because they're going to take so much confidence from that win over Napoli.
A different team completely. I hope that Arne Slot can turn it around for them, and they can have a really good campaign still, because they've struggled, and quite a few teams have struggled so far this season in the Eredivisie. There's still teams without a win. I said one of those as I'm currently talking. But yeah, there's... Oh, goodness, yeah, from Pek Zwolle down, really, there's teams that haven't really found good form yet. Is there anyone that you're thinking, God, they're in for a long season? I mean, I know at the start of the season we said that Ardo and EKC are probably going to be down there. And EKC have had a good start, but Ardo, for me, struggling. Sparta, Fortuna, Emmen, unfortunately, like they're in for tough campaigns. Who do you think is going to be in for a tough one?
Yeah, I think that for me, I think Sparta Rotterdam have been a bit unlucky. I think if you look at the last few weeks, they should have beat Feyenoord. They had that chance at the end that Bio saved. They did really well to come back from 4-0 down against AZ, to today, they probably would have beat Heracles if it wasn't for a moment of madness from their captain. Ajax got sent off. So yeah, I think they're close to getting their first win in the campaign. I think that they might be alright, but I would have big concerns about ADO Den Haag. We'll see what they do against AZ tonight. Emmen look really poor. Fortuna Sittard look really poor. And I think you now have to put VVV into that category because what they showed against Ajax was diabolical. I mean, if I was a fan of them, I'd be absolutely fuming at that performance against Ajax. You could say Ajax capable of beating anyone, but yeah, 4-0 down at half time, then down to 10 men, they totally threw in the towel and just gave up. Didn't show any fight against Ajax whatsoever. And yeah, I think if they continue to play like that throughout the season, then they're probably one of my favourites to go down. Them, ADO, and I think RKC have done really well in the past few weeks. I think that they signed well. I think Ola John's actually a pretty good signing for them if they get him fit. I was expecting them to be rock bottom again, but they're actually showing some fight. Whereas teams like VVV, ADO, Emmen, Fortuna Sittard all look pretty bad. So I'd fear for all of them at the moment.
For me, I hope that Emmen and Fortuna can turn it around. Two really good clubs, but they haven't yet been able to bed in the new players, particularly at Fortuna Sittard. They've had a lot of new signings. They're good players there. They just need a bit more time. But I feel that their coach might not get the time to see out these results. I think they've got some really tricky games coming up, Emmen and Fortuna. When you're without a win, you don't want some really tough games against the top 3, top 4 teams. So that was the guys down the bottom. Willem II, for example, in mid-table at the moment, I'm sure they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine this season, but they haven't really got going yet. And for me, it's just that if the new goalkeeper Rauter is not great, he's had a long time sitting on the bench for PSV, and just going forwards as well, lacking a bit of fluency at the moment, which is a shame because in those Europa League qualifiers, it look like they're going to go in for a really good season. But yeah, no, further up the table. Who's caught your eye so far, Mike? Is the obvious one to say Vitesse and Heerenveen? I mean, Heerenveen had a really difficult summer, but signed some decent players, and they've hit the ground running, and they're currently 4th in the table. But Vitesse as well. I've been such a big fan of Isama Tanana playing behind the strikers, and he's so creative. It's good to see him back at his best after a failed time in France. But also their new setup, it just seems to be flummoxing Dutch teams. They just don't know how to put up with this new formation that's quite expansive and creates lots of chances. Who have been the standouts for you so far?
For me, I'd say Vitesse are the obvious choice. I think that the coach has got him playing really well. You've got Bazor at the back. He's been a revelation at centre back. Having him as a ball playing defender is worked out brilliantly. They pick up wins left, right and centre. I think he's just got the best out of his players so far, and I think that they're one to watch. I've been impressed with Heerenveen. I'm a huge fan of Joey Veerman, and I think he's been excellent so far this season. And up front, Henk Veerman has added the goals, and I think that they're an outside shout for a European playoff spot. The other team that I'd say is doing well is Groningen. We're not seeing enough of Arjen Robben yet, but even without him, they're picking up wins and points. And I had them as being a team that would get into the European playoff spots because of Arjen Robben's influence. But at the moment, they don't really look like they need him. I think that they've got other ones in attack that are doing well, and they've got a good group of youngsters as well coming through. So I've been impressed with them. So yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 clubs outside, the original top 3, 4 that have done well so far this season. I think Vitesse is the one that you look at and think, how far can they take it? Because getting their first win against PSV at home for over 23 years, that's going to give them such a boost. They've got goals on the side, their defence is good, their midfield's good, and as you say, they've got somebody like Tanan who didn't even play today, who's coming in to add creativity. So yeah, it's definitely a side that can go far.
There's lots of exciting things about Vitesse, and the fact that they played so well without their key man today just shows you that they could have the potential to go further. And as for FC Groningen, the way that Danny Bell sets them up, they're just so sound defensively. that means that they can then have these top 8 finishes and see where they go, see if they can finish any higher, because they don't have lots of talent in attack. And like you say, with that Arjen Robben as well, 7th isn't a bad start out of his first 6 games. Just a quick note on Arjen Robben, I really hope that he can get fit and play, just because it's so frustrating being an Eredivisie fan, then being so excited that Robben comes back and thinking, wow, Groningen could be in for a good season now because of this. And he's played how many minutes of one game? No, 2 games, but he's just been a bench player, hasn't he? Pretty much.
Yeah, I think he's one of these players that, I hope it's not the case, but it seems to be that if Groningen have a big game coming up, he might feature, whereas somebody like Fortuna Sittard, they're probably thinking, oh, I could win it without him, so we just won't risk him. But yeah, against PSV, he obviously came off injured, and to basically treat him up and like basically wrapping up in cotton wool because you don't want him to get injured again. Came off the bench against Utrecht for say 10-13 minutes. There's actually a point against Utrecht where he cut inside and shocked the whole crowd by actually passing, well, not the crowd, but anyone watching the game, by actually passing the ball instead of shooting. So he's changed a bit. But yeah, that's what I see him play. I want to see him start games. I want to see him playing against the teams that Groningen are going to win. Because Arjen Robben up against the defence of Fortuna Sittard or an RKC is going to be terrifying. And that's the kind of games I want to see him, because the ones that if Groningen drop points and then they're not going to make the European playoffs, and that's the ones that he needs to play. And he can't just play in the games against the Ajaxes, Feyenoords, PSVs, Utrechts, Vitesses, because that's not the ones that Groningen really have a chance of winning. So yeah, it's been disappointing so far, but it's still a long way for Robben to come into it.
Now, speaking of Robben and the Dutch national team, we're going to finish this podcast by answering some questions that we had in about Oranje. Of course, if you are a big fan of our podcast because of the Dutch national team, we've been doing lots of reaction videos recently to the recent games. So if you haven't checked those out, please do go and do that on our YouTube channel. The first question that I'm going to answer with Mike is going to be from Wazza. And it is, should we not always be starting coat miners, particularly if the Netherlands decides to play 3 at the back?
Not necessarily. I think that, somebody like Koopmeiners, he's still young. He'll come into the team eventually, but say if you're going to play 3 at the back, you've also got the option of moving Daley Blind into the centre. You've got other options that Frank de Boer could use. I don't think he's automatically going to just plop Koopmeiners in the centre of defence. I don't think he'll do that. He doesn't take enough risks as a coach. I don't think he's got to do something like that. I think he's got the tactical nous to make it work. So if you're going to play 3 at the back with, say, a non-usual one like Ake or De Vrij, Van Dijk or De Ligt, it's got to be somebody like Daley Blind or, God forbid, Joel Veltman.
Yeah, no, Veltman, he's still getting into the squad, but so is Babel, so is Strootman. I think there's actually a question with that in just a minute. But just on the Koopmeiners one, another one from Abdul. Don't you think that Koopmeiners and Calvin Stengs deserve to be starters in Oranje? And I guess the answer to that doesn't depend whether they start or not, because Frank de Boer probably wouldn't be considering that in any case. But Koopmeiners definitely showed a very good game against Mexico, didn't he?
Yeah, I really liked what I saw from him against Mexico. I think he was, for Netherlands in that game, he was probably the best player on the pitch. And that's why it's frustrating, where it's a friendly match. De Boer uses him, he plays well, and then he keeps him on the bench for the next 2 games that are competitive. That's the frustrating thing, because Netherlands can draw games or lose games, but if they give youngsters a chance and actually show some progression, then you can kind of forgive De Boer. But drawing against Italy in that last game, but bringing Babel on for the games against Bosnia as well, it's not what you want to see, and it's kind of just what you expected from De Boer, just somebody that's not going to come in, take no risks, and just play boring football. Bringing Babel off the bench when you need a goal is, to me, is shooting yourself in the foot. So you want to see De Boer take more of a risk and bring on somebody like Stengs, but I don't think Stengs' performances so far this season has warranted a starting spot. I don't think he's been that great for AZ. We can say, yeah, he's a definite starter. For me, I hope he becomes a definite starter because I want to see him playing really well because I think he's got something different. But yeah, I don't think he's been on it so far that we could say he's going to be a starter. And then if he does start for Netherlands, then you're going to get people in the Dutch media saying maybe he's been a bit of favouritism towards his son-in-law because, you know, Stengs is going out with his daughter.
That would be quite a story, wouldn't it, if he was getting picked because of that. But back to this thing about the choices for the squad. Question from @RJN Huskies. What would it take for Frank de Boer to stop calling in players like Woutman, Babel, Strootman, playing Luc de Jong from the start and a full match as well? It's just horrible decisions that he makes. Your thoughts on that one, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it for ages. Why does Koeman keep picking these players? Why were they picked before that? Why are they picked now? There's got to be a reason for it. It seems to be that de Boer said before that it was because of their influence in the dressing room. Both Strootman and Babel are part of the players group that speaks to the KNVB. They seem to be the experienced heads in the squad. That's probably why they're getting picked. But I mean, I generally don't see the point of Kevin Strootman in the squad. He didn't play any minutes during the last 3 games. You know, if he played the friendly, you could be like, right, that's fair enough. He's actually playing. But he doesn't play for Marseille. He doesn't play when he gets called up. It's just he must just be so influential in that dressing room that we don't see it. Because what is the point of calling him in to not play him in any of the matches at all? There's got to be a reason for it, but we just don't get to see that reason. And you've got to think that the only way he's not going to get picked is if young players come through and start performing on a regular basis. Because players that are coming through right now are kind of making it easy for de Boer to keep picking them because there's not really anyone that's really, really standing out across Europe that's taking that place in under 21s. You know, Joey Veerman's doing really well for Heerenveen, but because he's at Heerenveen, Frank de Boer's not going to pick him. Like I said, De Wit, are they going to get an Netherlands Cup? Probably not. The likes of Gus Till, Tony Vilhena, even Mikael Vlap at Anderlecht, he's out injured, but other midfielders that are coming through aren't exactly performing at a level where they're going to get called up to the national team. So until that happens, you are still going to get calls for Bowell or Strootman because young players around Europe just aren't doing it. You know, Dilrosun doesn't play for Hertha Berlin. Dan Juma's now playing in the Championship. You know, Noah Lang's just joined Club Brugge. You know, he scored this weekend, but they lost. So you need these players to start performing week in, week out for them to make a change. Chong, even he's not getting a game for Werder Bremen. So yeah, we need to see these players playing well on a regular basis before they come into the squad and take the place of these older ones that seem undroppable at the moment.
And a question from Tabe that says, do you think that Sam Lammers and Mitchell Bakker deserve a chance in the squad? But I think that the answer to that is the same as what you were just saying, because Lammers has only just joined Atalanta and Bakker's second, third choice left back at PSG.
Yeah, you know, Lammers got a chance to start for Atalanta yesterday, got hauled off after 45 minutes. Yeah, you need to see his players playing regularly and scoring goals in the case of Lammers. And for Bakker, he started again for PSG, got another assist, but every single time I praise Bakker on social media, I get not hundreds, but loads of messages basically saying he's very average, he doesn't play very well, and he's only there because PSG don't have anyone else to replace him because I think Kurzawa, who plays regularly, is suspended in League One, and Bernat's out injured for a longer period. So a lot of people are saying he'd be third choice if PSG had a full squad out. But I see things in Bakker that I quite like. I think he's quite strong. When I saw him play for the Netherlands under 21s recently, I thought he was excellent. So I don't see why everyone has such a problem with him. But I think eventually, if he holds down that PSG slot and performs regularly, gets goals, gets assists, and I can't see why he wouldn't come into the running. But when you got Daley Blind and you got Wijndal, I think right now he's probably third, fourth choice left back because you've got ones like Patrick Van Aanholt who can't get into the squad.
Well, Mike, I'm not in full agreement about the Bakker, but I do like him too, and I think some of the criticism you're getting on Twitter was a bit unwarranted, just because he's a decent left back. I still think Wijndal's a better option in future at left back, but he needs to really put in some strong performances for RZ again, because I thought defensively he's looked a bit suspect so far. The future looks bright still. There's still lots of players that are gonna come into this team and be brilliant. And we will have to talk about all of these fringe players, all these guys in their early 20s who haven't really kicked on. There are players out there that are going to really do well in this team. It's just they're not ready yet. And it's still not as if they're going to be in the generation which is after Frankie de Jong. Frankie de Jong's only young. There is still a gold generation to be had out of this team. So I'm not concerned about that. But we just need to make sure that the likes of Bolo, the likes of Wijndal, that they are given the time that they need to get into the team, and they will be starters eventually. The final question we had was about Van Dijk and who's the right replacement for him. Do you still think that Stefan de Vrij and Matthijs de Ligt is a good partnership going forward?
Yeah, I think that the two of them need to be Netherlands' first choice centre backs without Van Dijk. I think in the Nations League, then two will eventually be the players that play together. I know De Ligt's quite close to coming back for Juventus. If he doesn't come back soon, then I'd like to see possibly Per Skurs in there. I think that'll be Veltman. Again, God forbid, but I think it will be him. Nathan Ake, I think he's out injured this weekend for Man City. I don't think he's done very well for Man City so far. I think he comes into it, but I think the youngsters coming through will be Per Skurs, but I think hopefully Van Dijk's back for the Euros. I think he's still far away enough for him to recover in time and play his part at the Euros. But say he doesn't, then if you're going with two centre backs, it has to be De Vrij and De Ligt with Ake as backup.
And a final point on potential selections. I've recently kept an eye on Jeremy Frimpong, and I think that he's a good player, but for me, nowhere near the national team yet. Dumfries is a much better option. And Frimpong strikes me as someone who's still learning the trade as a defender, and he's still a winger that's being played at right back. And when you're playing for Celtic, I guess your main attributes as a fullback are how you get forward and not so much how you defend. For me, Frimpong isn't one either at the moment for the national team. Mike, is there anything else you want to talk about on this podcast? And we'll have to be sure to do one a bit sooner than the recent gap we've had between our podcasts. It's been a good start to the season, hasn't it, in the Eredivisie? And I'm sure that in time we're going to start learning who the main contenders are for the title.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating start to the season. Just say coming into this weekend, you'd say Ajax were the one that had the little blip, and PSV looked good, but now it's totally turned on its head. Ajax are the ones that look the strongest. They're at the top now. PSV have had their blip. I think it's going to be fascinating seeing them to duke it out for the title. I think that Feyenoord's start to the season has been poor. I think that the games that they've had for them to drop points in them, I think that's really poor. If they want to be title contenders, they should be beating Sparta Rotterdam. They should be beating RKC Valvik, because if you're Ajax, you go away to RKC, you probably beat them 3-4-0. Whereas Feyenoord are drawing. So that's the kind of reason why I don't think they're now going to challenge. I think the start that teams like Vitesse and Heerenveen have been really encouraging. So it's going to be good to see them for the rest of the season as well. So there's so many fascinating stories in the Eredivisie. I think down the bottom as well. It looks so tight. There could be 5-6 teams going down into that relegation battle. So it's just so many fascinating things so far in the Eredivisie. And the performances in Europe as well. I'm intrigued to see that. The win for AZ's give me so much more positivity, because I think if they had lost, Ajax had lost, PSV had lost, and Feyenoord had drew, it'd be a horrible week. But now you look at it and you're actually quite positive because of that one win. So I'm intrigued to see how the rest of the games go as well.
And of course, we've got the Netherlands national team games coming up soon. Spain at home in November, Bosnia at home also in November, and then also a Nations League game away at Poland. And then it's until March then, of course. So there's 3 good games coming up in November involving the Netherlands. We'll be sure to do some more content for you guys soon that are listening. Of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, do hit the like button and subscribe if you are new to Football-Oranje. And we'll be sure to do one of these again soon. Thanks for listening.
Dat is Bergkamp. Dat is Bergkamp.
Vitesse, ja, ja, ja.
Daar is hij. Ja, ja!
Daar is Klaassen, goal!